Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Andy Quirin, and I have with me today Nate Lewis, and we are from Alchemy Technology Group. We are excited to walk you through all of the amazing tips and tricks that we're seeing for a successful Glean deployment. Here at Alchemy Technology Group, we are helping customers all across the country with their Glean deployments day in and day out. My name, like I said, is Andy Quirin. I help lead our analytics and AI practice here at Alchemy Technology Group. And with me, I'm very excited to have Nate Lewis, who is our chief Glean architect, who has helped leading a lot of these Glean deployments. Nate, do you want to talk really quickly about your role with Glean in the last few months?
Yeah, working with Glean for about a year now, over probably about a dozen different deployments, like Andy said, all across the country. And it's been a really cool experience. We've worked with a lot of vendors, but Glean has really been the only one where I see clients kind of coming into meetings excited about the next steps and to really see the power of this platform as a whole, rather than just being some standard type of deployment experience that we see with other products sometimes.
So I'm really excited to jump into the conversation and see what these top tips and tricks are. As we're doing these, there's some really big overarching themes that we're seeing to make these successful. And for all of these, really, it is a multi-phase approach to making sure that we're driving the most out of these different deployments. And it comes from a couple of different options. It's everything from the overall foundation, and that is your connectivity, making sure that you have the data across all of the different right places, that you're feeding it into the knowledge graph, that you're setting up the tool properly at a fundamental level that it is ready to go. Two, that you're doing the proper adoption so that you have the proper end user trainings, admin trainings, that you're able to go and share best practices, that you're able to do proper communication so that people are able to come in and see, what they should be doing with Glean and how they should be properly interacting with it to help drive that adoption. And then that last big key piece is just how do we help set you up to scale? So it's not just a, hey, let's come connect your data sources and walk away approach, but it's a, let's make sure that we have all the proper security, governance, and cost monitoring in place to make sure that these platforms are set up for success to continue to grow and scale with each and every organization. Anything I missed there, Nate? Are you ready to jump into those tips and tricks?
No, I mean, there's kind of a question on the bottom of this slide. What did we initially underestimate about deployment successes? I'd really say the focus is on number two there. Before we started working with clients, we actually deployed Glean internally. Glean makes it very, very easy and quick to set up these data sources, these tools, stuff like that, and they make it really easy to scale. But what we found is the kind of trouble step on this is really the adoption and the training piece. A lot of users kind of get stuck on, what can I even do with this platform? Here's my day-to-day. I don't really know where it fits in, and that's kind of why Alchemy's decided to come in on the enablement and onboarding piece to really help teach these end users, teach these admins how to make this a successful product and have good adoption long term.
Yeah, that's a great point. Even though I would say Glean has the easiest and lowest barrier to entry of any of the AI tools that we're seeing on the market today, users are able to basically just open up their Chrome browser and their Glean is, and they can just start asking questions right away. AI is still new. And unless you are going in and knowing, how agents work and how to have conversational AI analytics to make sure that you've got the right data connected, it's still a very new experience to a lot of our users. So making sure that we have that part is really, like you said, the foundation to ensure long-term adoption and stickiness of the platform.
Yeah, I mean, it's really just a kind of a creative and a curiosity problem at the end of the day is how do we make these end users want to get the most out of Glean themselves? We can do very, very basic things super easily, but once we get to those more advanced type of workflows, a lot of users just, they don't know where to start. So we want to help them kind of understand these limitations and these boundaries and how to get the most out of Glean.
Yeah, well said. Oh, without further ado, let's jump into our top 10 tips and tricks. So the first one that we outlined here is really the foundation, not only for Glean, but for most of our AI projects and most IT projects in general, is to really not just come in as doing AI for AI's sake, not just deploying a platform to deploy to a platform, but really as part of this process to really understand what are the business outcomes, the business goals, initiatives, pain points, where can we get the most value out of this investment? And as part of this Alchemy onboarding package for Glean, this is one of our key focus areas of not just bringing in uh, our Glean architects, but also our business analysts and helping to go and identify and work with those business users on what are those key processes that a Glean agent or other aspects of Glean can help and automate and really save time and productivity throughout the day. And by understanding that really helps set our priority list on key users to go and target to enable, agents to go and build and support them, and then make sure at the end of the day that those business criteria are being met. Each Alchemy onboarding package comes with a la carte hours, and by understanding these business outcomes, we can really make sure that we focus those hours that to go to answering those questions.
Yep, that was well said for sure. It's kind of like if you go to AI and you say, reinvent the wheel, it's going to give you a square because we didn't define any of these things up front. We don't have any use cases. Did we want the wheel to be better? Did we just want a different shape? We have to always name the problems with what exists today, and really figure out a lot of our standard operating procedures, stuff like that, before we even hit the ground and start deploying this as a whole.
I love that metaphor. And that's not just Glean, that's all these LLMs, they're reasoning engines. And the better that you can come in and you can give them that context, that prompt engineering to better understand and identify what's going on, the better your outcomes are going to be. So that is a fundamental step in this age of AI, of the more context you can feed to them, the better the overall outcomes are going to be. Semantics, ontology, it all makes a big difference. Nate, this is also a very, very key one where identity and permissions are really the foundation of success within Glean in terms of making sure that the right people are seeing the right data at the right times. When a user queries the data, Glean needs to make sure that the results that they're showing them are reflective of the permissions and the identity strategy, as if that person were going and logging in and pulling that information out of those systems directly. And as Glean goes and ingests the data from across all of your systems to build out that knowledge graph, alongside of that data, it also pulls out that permissions data so that it can properly reflect and give those answers to the right people at the right time. So having this identity strategy in place is just so fundamental to that overall success. Is that right, Nate?
Yep, that's exactly right. That's it. It's one of those things that falls in line with Glean just being very, very quick and easy to set up out of the gate with its data sources. Is you already have these permission structures and data governance things defined. So Glean is just going to piggyback on those at the end of the day. If I cannot naturally go and find this file or see this email, Glean's never going to expose that for me. And what happens under the hood with Glean is before we even start to pull files, it's going to pull in what are your actual permissions. So the context that's being brought in for your answers, never have anything at any point that doesn't have to do with something you can access yourself. So it's very secure overall. This is definitely one of the big highlights of Glean. I've never seen it mess up or even we tried a lot of prompt engineering for a while just to try to get it to tell us something that we don't want to know. And it does a very, very good job of just always respecting these permissions and, giving
Glean
appropriate
Plus
responses.
is also really good at being able to highlight where some of your sensitive data might lie.
Yep.
At Alchemy, Glean and outside of Glean, we're helping customers with their identity strategies all the time. And there are some customers who end up bypassing this step and it comes back to bite them. I've seen other customers roll out other platforms and don't take proactive measures to make sure that their data is properly secured, classified, governed, and permission assessed. So if they go and they spin up any other LLM and just open it on their SharePoint site, we've had other customers who have sensitive HR data, for instance, and just say, hey, I'm going to roll out tool X and say, hey, have you gone in and made sure that there's no, have you done a governance sweep of that data set? It's like, no, we're just going to go and permission should be fine. And inevitably, there's some hidden folder that's a subfolder that has security data or credentials, or it has salary information or upcoming terminations we've seen recently with another example. So you got to get this stuff in check just to make sure that you're not going to get in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, Glean is going to make it easier for your users to find data. And it's going to expose those types of holes at the end of the day. Another good example we found is sometimes managers have had employees leave. They get access to their mailbox and everything like that. And when they come back, they never break that join. So the manager within Glean is actually getting responses based off of that user's email. So we want to make sure we do checks and kind of a full just analysis overall of the data governance strategy. Some people have, Varonis or something like Purview. We always love to run those scans prior to it, but if you don't, that's okay. Glean does have Glean Protect Plus, so you're actually able to see any of these sensitive data findings directly within Glean and have that removed automatically. So there's a lot of things that Glean has built in. It's not going to solve your actual downstream data source issue, but within Glean itself, it's going to keep it safe and secure. You'll get all of the social security numbers, everything like that out of there.
That's right. All right. So the next thing we want to talk about, tip number 3, is all about getting the most out of your data. With Glean, Glean is extraordinarily powerful, really just with the underlying knowledge graph that Glean sits upon across all of your different data sources. And we see this really being a market differentiator compared to a lot of the other products that we see out there. Other tools, for instance, just go MCP, you ask it a question, it finds one data source, it sends one MCP query over, pulls back an answer. The power of Glean is really on this knowledge graph enterprise AI layer that it builds, where it goes and it connects to everything. It's going to connect to your ERP, your CRM. It's going to connect to your unstructured data in your SharePoint and OneDrive, your inbox, your calendar, your data platforms like Snowflake and Databricks. It'll connect to your website, your competitor's website, and it pulls that information all at once into that knowledge graph from everything. And by being able to pull all of that information together into one place, when I go and I ask it a question like, hey, I'm about to meet with customer, ABC, it's not just going to go to my CRM, MCP, pull back, here's some information about that customer. It's going to look in my inbox and see the last time I sent them an email. It's going to look in my calendar and see when we met with them. It's going to look at my Teams channel and see the last time Nate and I talked about it. It's going to go look in our data lake, and it's going to sum up all of the the seasonality and trending and analytics for that customer for the last several years. And it gives me one cohesive answer across everything because it's able to connect so widely.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, on top of that too, Glean has the enterprise search functionality. And that has been a huge kind of day one boost for my own productivity. I'm the type of person, I don't know if I saved this in SharePoint or OneDrive. Did I send this as an email or a Teams message? And now with Glean, I could just very high level, if I know the name of the file or something, I can search that. If I know what it contains, I can search that. So it works kind of like Google, but with a little bit of a step up where I can just search, general summaries of the files as well. So that whole knowledge graph that it creates, it's going to give you answers a lot quicker because it's not reaching out to MCPs. So it's going to keep, usage costs, rate limiting out of the question. It also brings in context a lot better. To Andy's point, AI will typically try to take the path of least resistance. So when it's using MCPs, it's going to just use the top one. If it's a Salesforce MCP or something, it's just going to go reach out to there. But because we have this data already trained, it's going to automatically search across that before it even tries to pull on any of these MCPs. So it is a lot better at just kind of getting a foundation of context to bring into your answer without needing to really have a very sophisticated level of prompt engineering.
So when we're helping people do their rollouts, we would say on average, a normal customer has 8, 10, 12, 15 data sources. And you're going to get the most out of Glean if you can get all of that across everything ingested into that knowledge graph. But we understand the reality where in order to get Glean up and deploy and start getting value, we can break these into chunks. So Glean has the ability to go in and we can work with you to go start working with those highest value, highest priority data sources, get all of those up and online. And then as we're continuing to go and do phased deployments and rollouts, we can then onboard the second wave and then the third wave until we get all of that data put back together.
Yep. I mean, all three of these rows that you have, every single piece of data that you have should live within one of these three rows. At the end of the day, with our 1-year roadmap, whatever it might be, we do want everything brought into Glean. But for an initial just day one, we really want to hit those high value targets, those quick wins, things that a lot of users are using. Wave 2 is your more kind of niche applications where maybe a handful of users are using them. Still a lot of value, but it's not org wide. And then your roadmap is a lot of these custom connectors that we might need to build and stuff like that.
Yeah, and no one's ecosystem is ever complete. There's always data sources coming on and coming off, and we're helping customers be able to continuously add to this to make sure. And that really brings us into our next tip here, which is no data source should be left behind. And we're going to get the most value out of this by being able to get everything across the board onto it. Glean has 120 plus native connectors that are amazing at just plug and play connectivity for all of your main brand name data sources and enterprise systems across your ecosystem. But for almost every single customer, 9 out of their 10 will be covered by these native connectors. But then there's also always 1 or 2 really key homegrown systems, legacy systems, or ones that just aren't part of this native connector list that have key valuable data that Alchemy can really help bring into the fold.
Yep. Even on-prem connectors. We've done those before with on-prem file shares. Those are a little more unique. Glean doesn't have a native connector for it, but because of Glean's kind of robust scalability, it's not a limiter. We can always work around these things, and that goes for tools as well, where we're actually doing things on behalf of users. We can always build custom tools, custom MCPs, stuff like that.
And this is really where we're as Alchemy, one of the things that we're delivering is the highest value to our customer is the ability to come in and turn these custom connectors around in just a couple of weeks. It's a very easy modality to come in, identify what these other high value data sources are that don't have these native connectors. And to Nate's point, anything from being able to tap into APIs, webhooks, data extracts, or help build you out from scratch. We can do all of those things to help build those custom connectors to make sure you're able to get the most out of your Glean deployment by making sure no data is being left behind.
Yep.
So talking about getting the most out of your data, this is my kind of expertise and where I'm helping a lot of customers is really with the data platform and analytical data within your environments. And it's just so exciting to see just how far these LLMs are coming in terms of data and analytics, because it's a totally different ballgame when it comes to kind of quantitative numbers than it does with just kind of the rest of being able to ask qualitative questions around Glean. Glean is natively able to connect to Snowflake and Databricks as kind of the 2 best of breed data platforms that are out there on the market today. And in doing so, it's able to leverage both Cortex Code or Cocoa within Snowflake and Genie within Databricks, so that if I wanted to ask a question that would normally be very hard for an LLM to answer, like hey, be able to analyze our main KPIs over the last 6 months and give me trending and analytics, or help build a quantitative forecast, or let's do a correlation matrix between which customers are buying which products. Something like that would be very hard for an LLM to do out of the box. LLMs can go, and if that information already exists in PowerPoint or something, they can surface it, but it's very hard for them to go and be able to take a really numbers-based question and look at a database and know how to interpret those numbers to give an answer to that. And Glean's analytical connectors to Snowflake and Databricks really solve those problems. It's able to go and you can go and ask a question like, hey, build me a forecast with confidence intervals on which customers are going to buy what. And it's able to go into Snowflake. Snowflake will translate that into a SQL query. We'll be able to build out that forecast, be able to go and present that out as a result right back in Glean. So your users aren't having to go and open up any separate windows, and just have conversations about their KPIs. And where this is beneficial, even if you just had Snowflake or Databricks, mainly is a couple of things. One, it's just right there in your browser. Your everyday user doesn't have to go and log into a second platform to go ask these questions. But the real value is being able to ask those follow-up questions. So if I ask Glean, why are our revenue numbers down? It can go into Snowflake or Databricks and say, hey, your revenue for this product is down by 20%. And then I can go and I can ask follow-up questions. I can say, why do you think that the revenue for that product's down 20%? And it can look at the rest of the knowledge graph and start to pull in those answers. It can say, well, your main customer went and churned to another product, or you have another product that's cannibalizing this product, or your manufacturer's warehouse burnt down, and I found that information online, and you just don't have the supply to match demand, so you're leaving money on the table. And being able to answer that why question is just incredibly powerful. Everyone can go and pull up a dashboard and see this number's up and this number's down. But Glean with that knowledge graph is really uniquely positioned to be able to understand the why behind it.
Yep. I think you hit the nail on the head with that one, Andy.
Sorry, I get excited about this one.
No, this is all your wheelhouse for sure.
Yeah.
Andy's done a great job with kind of consulting our clients, especially in the pre-sales side, with what Snowflake and Databricks can really do. We've had a couple of good use case come from clients already for really integrating Snowflake in a very professional kind of a KPI context way. So we've seen good results from it so far. You can always reach out to Andy if you want some demos and stuff like that too. He's always happy to do it. But very cool use cases can come from this.
This is a really neat nuance. And there's stuff also, even if you're a very mature Snowflake shop or very mature Databricks shop, never in a million years are you going to ingest your emails into Snowflake. You're never going to ingest your PDFs and Excel files and PowerPoints like into Snowflake, things like that. With Glean, it brings it all together. So it's really that one place to be able to give you that full picture.
Yep.
The next couple of tips and tricks are really about the overall rollout and how we put a really focused approach on making sure that we're approaching the rollout to lead to as much success as possible. And I want Nate to speak to this, but the one thing just from my 2 decades of doing analytics and AI projects is you really have like one chance to roll out to your users and to build that trust. And if you do something and you work for 6 months on it and then you roll it out to the entire organization and something's wrong, it is just so easy to lose that trust and have to be starting over from square zero. So this is a deployment methodology that we've worked on across many of our projects, Glean and otherwise. But by coming in and doing a phased, considerate rollout, it makes a world of difference.
Yep, definitely. And it really doesn't matter the size of the company either. You can have
Yeah.
20 people, you can have 200, 300,000 people. No matter what the size is, we still want to have, we call it the pilot group, your initial champions that will be carrying the name of Glean, learning about it early, talking it up to other people, but also doing your testing and just making sure that all of your gaps have been closed. When we go into these conversations, we typically like a pretty diverse group for both departments and tenure. So we want people who have been around the block for a little while. They understand how the company works, where data lives, but we also want people who just don't know at the end of the day. They're new to the company. But then we also want to bring in just kind of a healthy variety of the different departments so that everyone's represented correctly. Doing this really gives us the ability to see for each client if a new hire comes on board, can they use Glean to get up to speed quickly, find the data that they couldn't find before? For the people who have been around, will Glean help them kind of add some more seamless functionality to their workflows and their day-to-days? And then we're, talking to each department independently. We want to know what we can do for HR, for the sales team, for any of the technical resources. We definitely want to choose a diverse group. If you're a company of 20 people, we still want to bring in 5 to 7 of them first. We'd never want to just go live to everybody at once.
And there's things that we've uncovered during these kind of initial pilot groups where Glean gets better and better and better as you continue to roll out, and as more and more people using it, it reaches a critical mass, and the answers continue to refine and get better and better. But in this initial pilot group, you'll uncover what are the main questions that people are going to be asking each day, and it's going to be stuff you've never even thought of. And in some instances, it's going to be a data source that's not even on your priority list. Um, if someone comes in and the first thing that they look for is what's my PTO policy, and you're like, oh, I've just been focused on getting our ERP and our CRM and everything else. I didn't even think that people are going to be asking about something as silly as what our benefits package and PTO policy. You realize that, hey, that might be a data source that we need to bump up the list, something like that.
Yep.
So
Yeah, and that's also part of our, kind of our step one conversation going into these projects is taking kind of a snapshot, high level view of what data exists, where does it live. So for things like HR policies, maternity leave, PTO, we have those conversations of just, hey, do we have this in a place that Glean can see first and foremost? Is the data up to date? Is it accurate? Stuff like that. And during this pilot phase is when we really start to get to test these out a little bit more, to where, like Andy said, Glean is a very living implementation. It tunes itself, but we also have levers in the back end on the admin side to also kind of pull and tweak as we go, to get credible and accurate responses at the end of the day. But this pilot group is what's really going to help us get a good understanding of what users might ask, what agents they might need, some of our use cases to roll out with day one, and then finding any of the gaps that we can close.
yeah, and that rolls into this next tip number 7, which is very very closely related to everything that Nate was just saying. Is have this plan for this phased wave deployment. We start with this pilot group. We're working side by side. We're uncovering different data sources that might not be on the list. We're uncovering different questions. We're also scrutinizing the data as much ourselves to make sure that permissions are perfectly set, that the answers are tuned in and giving the quality, that the prompt engineering has been done so that everything is going well. But then identifying, which business unit or which area or group or team should be the next one until we go for the full org-wide deployment. Each of these,
Exactly. Yep.
might only be a week. It might be 2 weeks as we continue it. The rollout goes very fast, but by doing it one group at a time, that way you're able to go and do these end user trainings for that group. You're able to go and push out the communications group by group, and that's where we're seeing the most adoption and stickiness.
Yep, and every single step on this kind of graph that he's got on the bottom, we are doing training sessions with the pilot group, with the additional waves you're bringing in, and then org-wide, we do, kind of company lunch and learns, so that all of your users have been enabled. Your pilot group is really getting a ton of experience, so that they're even able to help with the prompt engineering side or use case side for some of the other employees. Again, it's a very living implementation. Your end users are going to be learning how to use Glean, while Glean, learns how it's useful to them at the same time. So we always want to just encourage communication across the org to really get a lot of these wins out of it and kind of standardize those as a whole.
All right, let's take these tips and tricks home with some talk about governance and adoption. This is Nate. I'll let you lead this one because you're living and breathing in the operations side of things. But just from my perspective, going in and being able to lean on the operations and governance administration really is what allows Glean to be set up for scalability and continued growth. But go ahead.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, early on in the project, we definitely want to identify who the app owners are, who the stakeholders are, and who's going to actually own Glean, Glean's governance long term. Knowing who owns all of your different data sources, who those IT admins are, really streamlines the process of getting them connected and up and running very quickly and easily. But we also need to know who is going to admin Glean for your team long term. During that time.
Oh, I was just going to say, Nate's been really good at helping customers build like a center of excellence around Glean. And Glean, just as being in this AI space, is a very living, breathing organism that's growing on such a regular basis. Building that foundation for that internal Glean center of excellence is just such a requirement.
Yep. Yeah, but once we, kind of identify those admins, we do admin training workshops where first one is usually just getting the lay of the land, helping you understand all of the levers you can pull, configurations you can make. And then the second one is typically around how does this relate to your company in particular? Do we want to set up, templated PowerPoints when it's designing PowerPoints for you? How do we want people to be able to create agents? Should they share them? Do we need to have a process in place for approving agents? All of these things we talk about in those sessions so that day one, before we even hand this over to a pilot group, Glean has been configured for your organization according to your business requirements. We take compliance and anything like that into consideration as well, just to make sure everything is safe and secure long term.
Yeah. And possibly the most important part of the governance and administration, and one part where Glean really shines is the cost administration and cost governance portion of it. When you think about Glean as a tool, it's really uniquely positioned in the marketplace where it's not just you're not just being locked into one LLM. You have such a wide collection of LLMs from all the major vendors that it gives you a lot of versatility between these different models for your constituents and users to be able to be using. And there's a lot of best practice and optimization around that to make sure that you guys are leveraging that token spend to get the most value out of what you're putting into it. Imagine just going all in on one, major LLM, an Anthropic and OpenAI, whatever it is. And if your company goes all in on that, and your token cost goes from $1 a token next year to $3 a token, or $5 or $10 a token, you never know. It's going to be a really painful, tough decision for executives to know what to do in that situation. With Glean, since you have access to all of these different LLMs and all these different vendors, if one of these token costs skyrockets overnight, you're going to have that administration and governance controls to deprecate or turn those off for those overly costed models. But then your users aren't going to lose a second of productivity because you can just quietly push them into the more attractive ones. So
Yep. Yeah, a few different points I want to make for this one. Glean offers not just kind of usage insights, but also insights as a whole for how Glean is being used. So you can definitely help tune these models, tune the usage just based on how your users are actually using Glean. They have a lot of levers to understand which agents are using the most tokens, which models are using the most tokens, and who the users are that are really taking up a lot of them. So there's really good analytics on that end. To Andy's point, with the actual models themselves, Glean is agnostic. You're going to have Gemini, OpenAI. I think GLM is in there now too.
the NVIDIA
AWS is
models.
coming soon. Yeah, and then OpenAI is another one. We have the ability to enable or disable any of these or scope down who can actually use these models. For instance, at Alchemy, some of our services team, they do very heavy inputs, lots of research, stuff like that. So they have access to these higher end models that can handle that much context. But some of our other departments, they just need straightforward use cases. So we have different models that are better from that standpoint and don't really overthink it too much while also saving money. So Opus 5 is I think $5 for a million input tokens and $25 for a million output. You have the ability to enable or disable that for particular departments to make sure the right people have the right models. Everyone likes to just use the best of the best, but at the end of the day, most people don't need the best of the best. So we will help your team understand the differences between the models, what they're good at versus what another model might be even better at in a more efficient way. And part of our admin training is enabling and disabling those models for you.
Exactly. Very well said. And our very last tip and trick here is tip number 10. And that's really tying it all home from what we said at the beginning of this conversation of leaning in and understanding what those business use cases and outcomes are, and really leaning into how can we make the most out of them leveraging agents. We're using agents all day, every day here internally within Alchemy and for our customers that we're setting this up. And it's such a fundamental part of the productivity savings. Everything from being able to come in and set yourselves up for the day on knowing what you're going to do, to track all of your action items, to be able to draft all your emails, to be able to understand your understand all the meetings and contexts that are going taking place. There's so much room for automation here.
Yep, and this is one of those things that happens the entire project from beginning to end. It's always in our back of our head. The pilot group, we're talking about it with those users. We're extracting these use cases, figuring out which ones are the top and best to do. During the end user trainings, if you are going to allow your end users to create their own agents, we train them on how to do that, how to find their own use cases, and even how to have Glean help them find these use cases and stand these agents up and kind of debug and refactor them long term. This is one of those things that really goes hand in hand with Glean being a living implementation. Is your requirements for these agents will change long term. The agents that you think of, the agents that kind of pop up with new standard operating procedures and stuff like that, they're always changing. The list is always growing, but we always want to make sure we're keeping up to date with them. They're always accurate, and we have good ones ready to go day one for your users.
And this ties also back to the center of excellence that we're helping deploy for your group. Having ways to successfully deploy and push out agents, because you don't want everyone and every single one of your users to have to go build their own agent. You need a good strategy where you have key people building the agents and then people approving those use cases. And then once that they're ready to go, being able to publish out to wide areas of groups so they'll be able to scale and maintain in a single place. And that's a heart and soul of the use case.
Yep.
Well, those are our top 10 tips and tricks. There's many others, but as we wrap up this conversation in the last couple of minutes, there's definitely a couple of key takeaways. One is there's a lot of ways also to mess up a Glean deployment. Nate, do you want to just talk about one quick way of way not to stub your toe when deploying Glean?
Um, yeah, I mean these are quick moving deployments. But at the same time, we want to be patient about them. When we find issues like data governance or permissions issues, we want to
Gotta get
address those
solved.
things for sure. They need to be solved. We also never want to skip pilot groups or testing phases. We always need to have those in place. That's really where we find a lot of the actual end user issues that might come up. And stuff like that. But we also, it's just the idea of thinking outside of the box sometimes. Like, how can we utilize skills to solve this problem, or agents to solve this problem with auto routing into assistant, stuff like that. A lot of it is just, these move very quick, but we still need to be patient and diligent when anything comes up, so that we don't release something when we know there's any issues that might still exist on the back end.
Yeah, absolutely. As we come in and are helping customers all over the country, with these Glean onboarding packages, every single Glean deal, you have one of these onboarding packages to help you get through this first period of success. When we think about these onboarding packages, it's really this first 12 weeks of your Glean experience, and Alchemy is very highly tuned and experienced in coming in and making sure that we're getting you the best quality possible deployment during this first period. And then also we have subsequent offerings that once we get you up and running over that first 12 weeks, how do we make sure that we continue to grow and sustain adoption and continue to build out that center of excellence and expand and build out those agents to make sure that your Glean deployment is set up for ongoing and continued success as well. When just to summarize everything that Nate and I have been saying over this entire conversation, this is an entire playbook. It requires a lot of, we've had a lot of learning experiences. We've done this many times. It requires a lot of thoughtfulness, a lot of preparation, a lot of execution at each of these different steps, from overall preparation, making sure that you have a good strategy around your data connectivity, making sure that you understand your overall business use cases, that if your business users are going to be asking forecasting and numbers-based questions, that you got to have your data strategy there in place, that you got to make sure that you have your security and governance strategy in place. You got to make sure you have your cost budgeting and allowancing and monitoring strategies in place. You got to have all of these different components all going, working in conjunction with each other to make sure that all of this is going well. And then you're going to have the best of breed enterprise AI tool out there on the market to help drive productivity for your different business users. So Nate, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I'm so excited to go and share this message with everyone at the upcoming Glean Go conference. And if anyone has any questions about Glean and deploying Glean successfully, or deploying AI or overall AI strategies for your customers, this is where Alchemy is helping lead these conversations for customers all over the world each and every day. So thank you so much for your time, Nate, and look forward to continuing this conversation.
Yep. Thanks, everybody.
Have a great day.